Hi, friends. My name is Ranea Aukerman. I'm an assistant professor in the nursing department, and I'd like to talk with you for just the next few minutes about resilience. Doubtlessly, there are many within the faculty who have as much or more knowledge about this than I do, but I will just tell you the reason I come to this is my area of academic interest and research is in well-being and resilience, and using those concepts in an effort to mitigate moral distress and burnout in healthcare professionals, nursing in particular. So that's how I come to this topic and to talk with you about it a little bit today. So I'd like to share what I have been reading in recent days and weeks and months in the evidence about well-being and resilience and what that means for us. And it suddenly, in the recent last month, 6 weeks, has become a topic of great interest and great need for all of us, no doubt. I think before we go any further, one of the things that I would like to say right up front, however, is it's very important to acknowledge for each one of us the feelings that we are having in this chapter and what we are all calling, for lack of a better word, a very unprecedented period of time in which we are living through. So whether you're feeling anger, grief, whatever it may be, whether it's for yourself personally, whether it's for loved ones, whether it's for our local or global community, whoever that's with, there are a lot of feelings right now, and I think it's very important that we all acknowledge those for one another. So let's begin by talking about what's the definition of resilience? As I read quite extensively on the topic, I find that there are a lot of variations on what the definition is. So I think it's important for us to maybe have that same idea in our mind as we look at resilience together. So I'm going to pull this from the American Psychological Association, which seems a very good place to get a definition for resilience. They define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of stress. So I think that's a great place to go from. It's accurate and it's concise. Another one that I like very much, another definition that's concise as well, is it's how do you bounce back and then move forward and create a new normal when the unexpected happens. Again, we find ourselves there as well. I'd like to start us off for just a minute, taking a couple of deep breaths together, and then talk about how breathing is beneficial to us when we're discussing anxiety and resilience. So, if we could for just a moment, I would ask you if you would care to sit back in your chair, and let's just take a couple of deep breaths together. A deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And a second one in through your nose, out through your mouth. And as we do a third one, let's think about breathing in the community around us, the care that we have for the community around us. Breathe that in and breathe the anxiety that you might be feeling out. Let's do that one more time. Breathing our positive energy in through your nose and blowing our stresses away. Breathing exercises are probably one of the easiest things that we can make habitual. We don't need to carry anything with us. It's always there. It's just something that we have to stop and think about. Breathing has a lot of evidence behind it as far as being a great anxiolytic, and it's always there. I'm going to see if I can get out to you a video by Dr. Andrew Weil, who does a really wonderful breathing exercise called the 4-7-8 exercise. It takes a little more intentionality to do it, but in that light, it's an incredibly effective one to do as well. So I will get that out to the community. One of the things that I think that we just need to mention up front is in the past, historically, resilience has been thought of as a character trait. There was a good amount of time where people either had resilience or they didn't, and it was felt to be innate. And to not be a resilient individual might actually be seen as a character flaw. Well, evidence certainly shows us something much different. And we know now that there are those traits that we can see in people who are resilient. And there are traits or there are skills that we can learn to benefit us all in our own capacity to be more resilient as well. So we could talk about this forever, but I just want to share with you a few of the things that have really continuously bubbled up to the top of the evidence as I look through. And one of those things that is a trait that is seen in people who are resilient is a trait to recognize that bad things happen. They just do. Um, we don't step into it. It's not a wrongdoing on our part to have something bad happen. However, for those of us who maybe live a good part of our lives and we are a bit charmed perhaps, and we never have those instances where the sky just seems to fall on us, when something bad does happen, we may find ourselves kind of in the deep end of the pool where we can't touch our feet to the bottom and we find ourselves thrashing around wondering what happened, how did I get here, what did I do, what did I do wrong, and then we end up with guilt wrapped around it, which makes things so much more complex. When in fact, those people who are resilient and maybe that have found themselves in situations where bad things happen, we may find ourselves more of that why not me, maybe that attitude of why not me. What that does is when we have the capacity to say rather than why me, but look at it on the other hand to say why not me, we make ourselves part of a common humanity. And by finding ourselves in the midst of humanity, we find our compassion and our self-compassion, and it gives us the capacity then to find our way out, to find ourselves part of the larger community. And when we can take the guilt away and we can take the anxiety away, we are more capable of swimming our way out of that deep end of the pool. So that's one of the traits that we can look at. A second one that's very interesting is resilient people carefully place their attention. So what does that actually mean? What does placing our attention mean? When we can stop the chaos around us and we can place our attention in some place that may be more beneficial, those things that we can control in our lives. Maybe it's placing our attention on we're going to help our kids get their homework done. We're going to make a complete grocery list so that whoever goes out this week to get the things that we need in our home has a complete list, and we're not racing back and forth trying to get things done. It's placing attention where they might be beneficial. Let's take that down the path a couple of steps. And it may feel like a lot more than a couple of steps, but when we can place our attention somewhere, especially when we're in times of chaos, we find that we can place our attention then on practices that will be beneficial. And I would take us then to that place of practicing gratitude, placing our attention on the things around us to be grateful for has a large body of evidence to decrease our anxiety, to help us control chaos, and to actually having a practice of gratitude has actually shown a lot of evidence to, in a long range, create happiness. We have to be very careful with that because some people want to say happy people are grateful, but the evidence shows us exactly the opposite, is that people who practice gratitude in their lives actually become happier in the long run. Well, what does it mean to have a practice of gratitude? A lot of us have probably heard of three good things. The three good things study was done quite some time ago, and what it actually means is paying attention to the world around you and finding every single day at least three things to be grateful for. Maybe that's a good cup of coffee in the morning. Maybe your significant other got up this morning and made a really nice breakfast for you. Whatever it might be. Maybe the grass is turning green, and that's what we can be grateful for at the moment. But it actually means, with intentionality, paying our attention, putting our attention on those things around us that surround us that we can be grateful for. The next step to take in that makes it even more beneficial is beginning a gratitude journal. Boy, as being faculty, we should all have all kinds of paper sitting around us, perhaps a notebook that's not been used, at least for a while. Start writing down those things with a date and the things that you find to be grateful for. Maybe the first several days is just writing down green grass, cup of coffee. When you find that you can expand on it a little bit, there's benefit in that as well, because we know that by journaling, there are also tremendous benefits to our mental health there as well. So then as you've journaled, there might come those days when you just can't find anything to be grateful for. Your heart is too heavy. At that point, pick up that journal and read through, look back through the things that you have found. They are there. They're still there. And you can move forward in that fashion. The next thing to talk about just for a moment is we can't leave the topic of resilience without talking about mindfulness. There is a plethora of evidence and a ton of journal talking about the benefit of mindfulness on resilience. So when we're talking about mindfulness, we hear that word so often just thrown around in our society these days. Everything seems to have mindful attached to it. But let's talk about mindfulness in its truest sense. And we don't have to be actually sitting on a cushion for a half an hour a day meditating. Sometimes we tend to think that. There are those of us who find that very beneficial, but that's not how we have to practice mindfulness, because the true definition of mindfulness, or one of the most simplistic but meaningful ones that I have found, is it's the simplicity and the practice of paying attention to the present moment and experiencing it with openness, curiosity, kindness, and a willingness to be truly present. Now, when we say that, we can also say prayer carries much of the same benefits. Prayer is a meditative practice as well. And so recognizing, what we're actually actively looking for in the process of being mindful is incredibly beneficial. And we know that there is a great deal of benefit towards being resilient. The things that we've already talked about, or that I've mentioned in this quick little video, are really all wrapped up in the concept of mindfulness as well. We see attention, and we see intentionality, we see gratitude and non-striving, and particularly when we can talk about non-striving for those things that we know that we don't have any control over. So I'd like to finish with a quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn. For those of you who don't know who that is, he is often thought to be the father of mindfulness in the western part of the world, particularly in the United States. But this quote says, "We take care of the future best by taking care of the present now." And I hope as we stop to think about our own resilience, that we carry that well beyond us. We are talking about resilience not only of our personal selves, but our family, our immediate circle, our Augustana family, who is so important to all of us as well, our community that we live in, the state that we live in, and then we have to take it all the way to our global community. If ever there has been a time in our lives that we see ourselves a part of the global community, this just has to be it. So as we think of ourselves and our compassion for one another, may we expand that to our global community around us. So I really want to thank all of you for just spending this few moments listening to my thoughts on resilience. And I would love nothing more but to continue this conversation with any of you who would like to reach out, that we could start a larger conversation. And I look forward to what your thoughts are as well. So for now, have a great day. Blessings on each of you, and thank you for being here with me.